The US is home to over 50 metropolitan areas with a population over 1 million. In each of these areas, you'll find a unique housing market that operates independently in comparison to the rest of the country. These unique markets are influenced by mostly local catalysts which create individual demand and supply situations. This is why when you watch your next real estate video on YouTube, you may want to think about the way the information is being presented. Each market throughout the country is a special entity, some of which share almost no behavioral similarities to the price action that we see on the national level. What I mean by this is this. When I show you a chart like the national Case-Shiller and zoom in on today's trend, which seem to indicate that prices are spiking up, that doesn't necessarily mean that your particular market is behaving this way. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, obviously, we know that real estate is very local and prices can differ immensely from state to state and city to city. But with that said, my bet is that you don't realize just how much things can differ. While one thing may be true in one city, the situation could be a complete 180 in another, and I'm not exaggerating either. As I talk right now, there are major US metro areas that are in the middle of massive crashes, yet the overall market seems to be holding up just fine. This is why when I reference something like the National Case-Shiller Index in my videos, the chart you see may not even come close to reflecting the condition on the ground in your city. This idea that each market is incredibly unique is nothing new to real estate historians. We have countless examples throughout history of cities that behave in completely different ways during, before, and after massive crashes. One example that you've probably never heard of is the 1990 real estate crash. If you take a look at the National Case-Shiller Index during that time, you'll see that there was a tiny dip in prices that lasted about a year. From about April 1990 to March 1991, prices in the US fell 3.13%. This dip appears to be nothing. Most people would look at that and say, what crashed? This was nothing more than a minuscule bump that doesn't deserve a talking point. But zooming away from the national index, you can see that this tiny blimp had serious impacts in markets like LA. In Los Angeles, we can see that from March 1990 to February 1996, the market fell 27%. That is a significant downturn, on par with the declines that we experienced on a national level during the Great '08 crash. For most people living in the US during this period, they most likely can't even remember this so-called early 90s hidden crash. But for LA investors and sellers, this time span was catastrophic. Countless articles showcase the carnage. This New York Times piece from 1990 outlines how sales signs lined the street for years, and while the LA market itself fell 27% on the metro-wide index level, in certain popular neighborhoods like Newport Beach and Beverly Hills, prices fell as much as 50%. One famous real estate developer who went on to become a politician recalled in a Vox article from 2016 that the conditions real estate investors were facing in the early 90s were almost as bad as the Great Depression and far worse than the Great Recession of 2008. So while this chart is great at measuring nationwide prices, there are many instances where it's useless due to the variance we observe in each of America's 400 plus housing markets. I just showcased how LA and other East Coast cities quite literally went through a downturn that rivaled the Great Recession, yet this fact cannot be spotted by viewing this chart. The data simply doesn't flow through as the crash was concentrated in specific markets. So knowing that, is it possible that we're undergoing something similar today in 2023? We know there are multiple cities where prices seem to be undergoing serious change. If we first look at the national statistics, you can see what I mean. The US Case-Shiller began to dip in 2022, falling around 5%, but now we're seeing an uptick once again as prices in many places throughout the country begin to skyrocket. Doing the same exercise and zooming away from the national story, we can see there are a few pockets throughout the country where markets are indeed crashing. Crashing in a way that seems to differ from this national rebound story, and these statistics are not exaggerated. These are massive falls that seem to heavily deviate from these nationwide numbers. For example, the city of San Francisco. If we look at the Case-Shiller numbers for this metro, we can see that from May 2022 to February 2023, prices declined by as much as 13%. Now, this may not sound too bad, but it's nearly 3 times worse than what was happening on the national level as measured by this chart. And if we look at something like Redfin data, we get outcomes even worse than this. According to their reports, the median single-family home cost around $2 million in April of 2022. Following this peak, the city underwent a massive decline, with prices falling to $1.4 million in January of 2023. In 9 short months, the median price of a single-family home fell by $600,000, a decline of 32%. This is a crash by anyone's definition, a true price correction that brought homes here to pre-2020 levels. San Francisco residents are experiencing a downfall worse than what we saw percentage-wise in 2008, yet nobody is really noticing. The story across the states is that bidding wars are heating up, interest rates are exploding, and once again the market is booming, but in specific areas such as here, this couldn't be further from the truth. Even now, after this small run-up to start the year, prices are 20% below the peak, which by most standards is a significant discount and showcases just how remarkable each market can be. And it's not just San Francisco. Another city that we can look at for similar patterns is Seattle, Washington. Here, via the Case-Shiller report, prices peaked in May of 2022 and proceeded to decline 17% in a matter of months, bottoming out in February of 2023. According to Redfin, the damage was once again worse, with prices peaking in March of 2022 at $1.13 million and then falling over 24% to $850,000 in January of 2023. This is also undoubtedly a massive drop, one that showcases just how quickly a market can turn given the right conditions. And I'm not going to go down the list any further, you get my point. There are always spots where you can see behavior that doesn't reflect the national story. And part of the reason this is happening, I think, is because of the low inventory situation. In a lot of these areas where there are not a lot of new home builders present, the market is dictated by what can just be a few dozen listings. For example, if we head over to the San Francisco market and filter out some of the basics, looking at only homes which have a minimum of 2 bedrooms, have been on the market for less than 30 days, and are under $3 million, we can see that there really is only about 70 homes that you can buy here. This means that this market becomes incredibly sensitive to even the smallest demand changes. It's what finance people call low liquidity, and it goes in both directions. If there is a sudden influx of eager buyers, prices can quickly elevate as you watch the few listings that are active feed off of each other. All you really need is 1 or 2 houses in your neighborhood to sell for some absurd price, and the next listing will obviously have a new floor to go off. This means that it only takes a small number of sales to push prices to absurd levels. Now, this same concept works in reverse. If buyers for some reason dry up and you start seeing massive drops in price, it only takes a few sales to cause panic. This downward spiral can be gradual, then all at once. When the inventory level is this low, the volatility can be extremely high. We've seen how this situation can materialize in months and cause overall price drops such as these. In years past, homes were a much more stable asset in that there were other listings you had to compete with on price. Now, in many neighborhoods, you may be the only available listing, causing situations like these to appear. In summary, it's clear that in some markets throughout the US, we are witnessing what can only be described as a crash, one similar in nature to that early 90s period, while in other cities, we are still witnessing sky-high prices and tough competition. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and if you're facing difficulty finding a home, please consider heading over to foreclosure.com with the link in the description. Foreclosure.com can help you find some of the best deals available today by targeting distressed properties such as bank-owned homes, government foreclosures, pre-foreclosure listings, and foreclosure auctions. Whether you're looking for a single-family home, condo, townhouse, or mobile home near you, Foreclosure.com provides the most up-to-date listings of all property types. Please check out the link below.